everyone. It is episode 349 of This is Whole Life, and it's a Saturday afternoon, and it feels really weird to be sitting in the studio with the podcast team, but there's a plus one today. Who wants to do the introduction? Ken, you want to do it since you're the big cheese, and this is, you kind of have the insight on this?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome.
One of the great things about being in charge is sometimes you get to invite your friends to come hang out with you. And today I get to hang out with just one of my good friends. I'm pleased to introduce, if you weren't at church on Saturday, if you didn't listen to the message later, then I'd like to introduce you to Furman Fordham. If you did listen to the message, then man, you know that Furman brought it on Sabbath. You'll want to go back if you didn't hear it and listen to that message. It was good. And just to kind of by way of explanation of who Furman Fordham Jr. is, we got to know each other in Nashville. I was pastoring the Madison campus Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the church that he pastored was maybe 15 minutes, away from Madison campus, and it was the Riverside Chapel Church. My church, historically predominantly Caucasian church. His church, a historically predominantly African-American Black church. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, a lot of times those kind of churches don't have a lot of communication with each other, and they don't really sometimes even know the other one exists in some cases. And I'm a little ashamed to say I pastored that church, I think, for 2 years before I think I even knew Furman's name. And then we were at some meetings where we were being given the opportunity to participate in a Nashville-wide evangelistic series. The pull-in was like, let's get all the pastors in the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference and all the pastors in the South Central Conference together, and we'll do something. And I remember Furman spoke up and he said, look, is this about doing an evangelistic series, or is this really about unity? Because he said, if it's about an evangelistic series, good thing to do, not that interested. But if this is really about, uniting and bringing churches together and having conversations, then I'm all in. And I just really appreciated just how straightforward he was. And afterward, I'd been struggling because I was at, a really large church. And unlike Orlando, where there's, 4 other churches very close to here that are the same or larger than this church, I didn't know anybody had a church that was even close to the size that I had. And so I've been trying to figure out, do I go find a Baptist church or somewhere where I can find somebody who's kind of a similar situation, but then they don't really understand some of the nuances of Adventism. And I was like, man, here's this guy who's pastoring a church about the same size that I have and multi-staff, and I can't believe we've never chatted. So we got on the phone, chat with each other, decided we wanted to start meeting monthly. And I just found a brother. It was amazing to me as we kind of started comparing our stories, how much we had in common, in spite of being raised in kind of culturally different ways within the same denomination, just how much we had in common. I was a student missionary in New Zealand as a youth pastor. He was a student missionary in Australia as a youth pastor. We both have wives that are elementary school teachers. We both started off majoring in other things, weren't necessarily planning on going into ministry. So there's just so much commonality there. And, the other big commonality is both of us are drawn to a picture of Jesus, not a Jesus that is out there condemning, not a Jesus that you have to earn something, but a Jesus where it's already been done for you, that we are saved by grace through faith, and that and Puck has a huge love for righteousness by faith, which I'm very much attracted to. So that is, by way of introduction, who we have sitting with us in the studio. Delivered our sermon this week as we kind of begin celebrating Black History Month here at WholeLife Church, and just couldn't be more thrilled to have him here. So, by the way, his friends and family call him Puck. I learned today that his mother has never called him anything other than Puck. So if you hear me say Puck here in the conversation, I'm talking about Furman Fordham. So just so you know that, I just sometimes I try to keep the professional name going, but sometimes it'll slip into his nickname.
I'm Furman Ford, And I approve this message. So tell us a little bit about yourself, that anything you'd like to add to what Ken introduced you.
Well, first, let me just say I'm happy to be here. It's good to be a part of the team. I've had a wonderful experience. I think you told me that this podcast is airing on
Wednesdays.
Yep. Which means my team is going to be playing in about 4 days, right? I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm a Chiefs fan, right?
Sorry, Tony.
So I am somebody who grew up where all we pretty much did was go to the football games. My father had season tickets. That was our thing, you know? And I'm excited about the fact that 50-something years later, I have an opportunity next week to be sitting in my father's living room, and we're hoping that we'll end up with another trophy. I understand there's another gentleman here who is just as ravenous about being an Eagles fan. So we wish you luck. We don't wish you success, but you know.
I like that. That's nice. That's cordial.
You know, very much
I appreciate that about you.
So the title of your message this morning was "I'm on my way to the Canaan land." That's going to mean something a little bit different next Sunday.
Very much so. Very much so. Very much so. We're going to be
the land of Lombardi.
Yeah. Well, we want to be on our way to the end zone, hopefully. But I'm from Kansas City, and like Ken mentioned, grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist. It's interesting. I mean, the white and black sides of the church, we can have parallel experiences but never come in contact with each other. I think one of the other things we found out was, weren't you also like a USM student body president or something?
Yeah,
I mean,
we both were student body.
It was like our lives were exactly the same, but we had never, crossed paths.
Never crossed paths.
So I was pastoring in Nashville, as Ken mentioned, and I remember that same conversation. Yeah. And I think what I was attracted to was somebody else who was not only just as candid, but just as maybe dissatisfied with kind of like going through the motions just for the masses, you know? Ken seems to be somebody who's saying, okay, look, I kind of want to cut through the fluff and let's deal with whatever the real is, you know. Yeah. So I am somebody that really kind of enjoys, if there's a white elephant in the room, I want to let's identify it, let's deal with it, let's
do it.
Let's deal with that. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that has attracted me to Ken. So tell you a little bit more about myself. I am a happily married man, 26 years. We have 3 sons. We're empty nesters now. One is an assistant pastor in Cincinnati, Ohio. The other 2 are students at Oakwood University. I am back in school, engaging in a righteousness by faith study at the seminary. And in addition to that, I am someone who is enjoying a second chapter in my career. I'm no longer pastoring a church, but I'm serving more as a pastoral coach to some of the younger pastors in our field. So that pretty much is me, man.
Nice.
You left out that you are a world champion rook player.
Man, you know what? There's this young man named Eric who happens to be the offspring of your pastor.
Oh, okay.
And I thought we were going to get together for just a little casual rook game this evening, and he's meeting me talking about he's going to be bringing it on, you know?
Well, Puck, when have you ever had a casual rook game?
Well, I mean, you know.
Come on now.
I mean, is this candid, Ken?
Let me just say,
because you had me at
let
candid.
Let me just say that Puck has a annual rook tournament that he was kind enough to invite Rochelle and I to come play in. We were embarrassed, like we were like, I don't know. It was we were a nice warm up for somebody. That's what we were, because I thought we were pretty decent rook players. No, and then my favorite part was that for those of you who don't know what rook is, it's a bit of a card game. Not that important. The point is, it can be played with depending on who you're playing with. There can be different kind of house rules,
oh my goodness.
And so. The rules that Puck plays with were very different than the ones I'm used to playing with. And so I thought that was going to be my kind of get out of jail excuse for not playing real well. Mm-hmm. And so Puck was like, well, what are the rules you play with? So I told him. And so he sits down with his partner. He goes, okay, so how does this work? And so I explain it. He goes, okay, let's try. Trounced Rochelle and I. I mean, it was we were beat down bad. And so, world championship
at
rook
least
player.
You got an invitation. I mean, Ken introduced. I mean, I've known about Rook my entire life. Of course, I've seen people play Rook. It doesn't make any sense to me. And Jeff, our other associate pastor, and Ken and John, our executive pastor, sat down at retreat last year and was like, "Yeah, you going to play Rook with us? We need another person." I'm like, "I don't think you want me to do that." and they found out very quickly they did not want me to do that because I think I was John's partner.
Yeah,
and we got mopped.
Well,
horribly.
I do love games. I grew up in a game-playing family. Rook is probably one of the ones I enjoy the most, but it could be Monopoly, it could be Uno, it could be Sorry, I could care less. Matter of fact, my wife remembers we were dating, and, you're going down the list. Okay, so, do you do this? Do you do that? And I remember saying, so, hey, do you play games? And she said, oh, yeah, most definitely. I said, oh, great, that's going to be wonderful, She came to our house, I think it was one Christmas or something, and it may have been like, 5 o'clock, and we're playing maybe Boggle, and then maybe around 7, we might play Risk,
Ooh.
And then let's say around 10, we decide we're going to play Scrabble, and then we go to our room. You think we're about to go to sleep, and about 12:30, my brother knocks on the door. Hey, anybody want to play Uno? Me and my sister pop up, yes, And my wife is like, okay, I don't think I really came from a game-playing family, But yes, I enjoy games.
Yeah.
Chiefs football, Rook, bow ties.
There you go.
That's probably me.
You're well-rounded.
Well-rounded.
By the way, my son did appreciate your bow tie today.
Well, thank you, man. That means a lot, my brother.
Stanton Reed.
Hey, wait. Stanton goes to this church?
Yes, he does.
Oh, my goodness. No, Stanton lived in Kansas City. He is like my bow tie here. Hey, shout out to Stanton Reed.
There you go.
No, he is the man.
He is the man, no
Very
doubt.
much so.
No doubt about it. So I was just thinking that, two very sharp-dressed men, it's always Stanton at WholeLife Church. I mean, he just
man.
He just has a presence, right?
Oh, Stanton is sharp.
And you were looking all the part for Stanton today, so I'm sure
I feel like my job is done, man.
You're probably done. So inquiring minds want to know, and this is, as long as we're talking about games, New Year's resolution. What was yours and how's it going?
That's a good question. My New Year's resolution this year, and I happen to be somebody who I'm a very choleric individual, so I like making plans and making goals, that's something I like to do. But my New Year's resolution this year was that I was going to balance my professional studies, the time that I spend with that, and I was going to make sure that I did not spend more time reading for school than I spent time in my personal devotional life.
Wow.
I did not want one to eclipse the other. Even though I am pursuing a PhD in religion, the majority of what we're frequently reading is what other people are saying about the Bible. And I said, no, I want to make sure that I am reading firsthand the Bible. So my New Year's resolution was, I cannot deal with any of my studies until I have filled my own personal tank, and I need to kind of keep track and make sure that I'm reading as much Bible for puck as I am religion for professors.
So we're only about a little over 30 days in.
Which means I'm actually doing pretty well. I have a little app on my phone, and I check it off when I have, because it's very easy for me to start the day and say, okay, I need to read so-and-so. No.
Yeah.
So I'm doing pretty well with my my starting my day with God,
Nice. You used it as an illustration in your message, so I'm like, well, at least we need to find out. If you're using it as an illustration, I need to know what yours is personally, because it's probably one that you're doing. I assumed you did one.
Yes.
I don't personally, but I just assumed you did if you used it, so I thought that's a good one.
I'm into any matter of fact, New Year's is my favorite holiday. Because I like organizing things, so you can start over, you can plan. Yeah, it's great, man.
That's awesome. Well, the thing that first grabbed me in your message today was you said salvation is both delivering out of and bringing into. And I wonder, you kind of noticed the Israelites, and I'm wondering how many noticed, like, hey, that milk and honey place, that sounds really, really cool. I like that part. Wait a minute, but then the bringing into part, aren't there like giants and people? That'll probably be fine. Let's just not talk about that. Let's just focus on the milk and honey. And then how about, when we pick and choose when we're in that space, we pick and choose the things we think God is going to be bringing us, the milk and honey, and we breeze over the other parts where we just want the milk and honey, like get me out, whatever I'm in. But then on the other side, when it's the bringing into, that's the scary part. And when I'm in that part, many times when we get to the bringing into, it's like, this is it. This was what I was this is what I was praying for. This is what I was waiting for. And now you've moved me finally. And then you get there and you're like, great. Thanks a lot. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. And I don't know what these set of circumstances mean in my life. And then it almost seems like you're back right in the through part again. It seems like you don't even get to enjoy the bringing out part, which I feel kind of happened to the children of Israel. As you mentioned, the journey could have taken 11 days, and it's like, well, great, we took 40 years.
That's crazy.
And now we're here and we're scared to death. And I think the application for our lives, maybe if we understood it better, it's so much of the up and the down, the hills and the valleys are, I'm out. Answer to prayer, that's an emotional, it's a spiritual high. And then the through part, I don't think anyone really, I've never really thought about it as the through part like you described it. And the through part, how do you attack, like maybe it's New Year's, okay? Maybe we need to look at it as New Year's, I'm not sure. But we've gotten the coming out part. Now we're at the through part when we're not sure what's coming. We know what we've prayed for. So we think we're here after we're really we think we're at the bringing into, but we're still not there yet.
Yeah.
How would you attack that for someone who kind of has gotten I feel like God has answered my prayer and I can realize that I've moved. I'm not there. How do I plan that part? What do I do for spiritual time? Because a lot of times I feel like when we know what we're looking to move from, we're asking God to take something from us or move us in a different place, strengthen something, maybe it's a relationship. But what do we do in the meantime if we don't have anything specific because we're kind of in that unknown and that through place? It's hard to know, do I just read my Bible? Let's pick something random and hope for the best? Or how would you attack that in that through space where things can sometimes be pretty barren like the desert?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. If you are, somebody like my wife and I just talked about us being empty nesters.
Yeah.
My wife has a Facebook page called Praying for Your Young Adult Children, okay? And every morning she posts a prayer. One of the things that we have realized is now that our children are gone and we can't grab them and corral them, we are so dependent on God to disciple them, So I think one of the major things that they have taught me is that I don't have control over these kids. I need to trust God to lead them. But then it dawned on me, do I really have control over me? Can I really lead me? I thought I could. Can I lead Puck to move from hatred to love, or from a mean spirit to forgiveness, or from jealousy to humility? I actually don't have the ability to lead Puck. And I believe that what we do in those seasons is we trust, So much of David's Psalms are about this panic, this turmoil, this desert, this fear. But then there's this twist in the Psalm where he'll say stuff like, but then I trusted in the Lord. But then I casted it on you. But then I so and so. I think for me, the main thing to do on the journey is to see God like a parent to me in the same way that I'm a parent to them. Man, I want them to succeed. He wants me to succeed, Yeah. And if I trust him, we actually will make it through. We really will.
Yeah, I like how you reminded everybody about that at the end. Like, God's not going to leave you in this process. He's gonna be good on his promise. I feel like when we have something solid, we'll beg God for it. We'll ask, we'll pray, we'll beg God if we could only do this, or if we could only get past this, or we could only fix this situation. But then let's say you've arrived at the other side and you brought it in, you say, man, this is really good. Man, thank you, God. And then again, it almost seems like there's a, now what do I do? There's another part to learn.
Well, Randy, do you think that maybe that sense of arrival is not truly arrival, but maybe you're mid-lap around Mount Sinai, or you're just seeing the mountain from a different angle?
No, that's it. Thank you. That's what I'm
really.
trying. But really, that's the point. Like, what do we do when we feel that way? But I don't think we ever arrive, because there's always something more. What do you do in the mid-lap, though?
Yeah, I think arrival in the story is heaven, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's arrival. So I love how you kind of reformatted it to say, okay, have I kind of seen those trees before? You know, I'm kind of back here again.
Familiar.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But I once again, and you know, I think many people have words that work for them, and it may not work for somebody else. But let's imagine that you were on an excursion, a journey, and it really seemed like the person was driving in circles, you know?
Sure.
Well, you know, I don't know how to drive around Orlando, but I kind of trust that Ken has my best interest in mind. I think he knows we have to be at church at, what time we have to be here? 8:30, you know? I mean, hey, how about I sit back and just kind of enjoy the views, you know? I think we, instead of being stressed about, okay, but God, where are you taking us? When are we going to get there? So-and-so. He is responsible for preparing me for heaven, you know? And how about I sit back and, you're about to take care of pride now? Okay, great. It's good. I'm down. I'm with it. You know, I think recognizing that God's, not just the goal is better heaven, but the process can actually be enjoyable. He's purifying me. I know it aches and I know it stings and so on, all that kind of stuff, but I actually will be better because of it, you know?
Man, you hit the nail on the head. I know it probably wasn't I couldn't really word it the way I wanted to ask the question. Thank you, Melanie, for pushing us back around. I almost called you Stephanie again. What is this?
I don't. Maybe I'll change my name.
I know you're going to be podcast Stephanie to go with Nashville Tim. I think. I don't know why this keeps happening. I called her Stephanie last week on the podcast. I don't know why that happened, and it was right there, and
It's all right, Brandy.
Thank you. But no, you answered my question, and that was what I was looking for, because I think the conclusion you came to is the part that I don't think we internalize, particularly people that feel like, you know, you've been around the mountain like 10 times and you don't feel, or you haven't grasped the part that God has it taken care of. And what we talked about over lunch, and I think it's appropriate here, about salvation and about, you know, knowing that God has it all taken care of. But that's a really hard concept for a lot of people to either understand or understand it and then put into practice. Knowing it is one thing, but actually feeling it, and I don't know. And I know our John gave a really good description of like kind of how he was a kid and when he figured it out, and what a great feeling to realize that like God has it all under control and you're not responsible for other people. But for a lot of people, they struggle with the fact just to know that God has it. It's done, even though we read about it. And what you gave us verses from John. What were those verses again? Do you remember?
Yeah, John chapter 5.
Because that made my heart warm.
1 John chapter 5.
Yeah, that made my heart warm for people listening that may just not really have that feeling or have that comfort in the journey that you're talking, the assurance. Thank you.
This is 1 John chapter 5, and it was verses 11 and 12, and it just fit our conversation. And this is the testimony that God has given us eternal life. And he's given us eternal life. And this life is in his Son. He who has the Son has life. He who does not have the Son of God does not have life. These things I have written to you, verse 13, who believe in the name of the Son of God, that you may know that you have eternal life and that you may continue to believe in the name of the Son of God. So I think there's a balance there. there's the reality that I can decide I want to go back to Egypt. I'm not interested. God is not in the forcing business, you know?
Yep.
But there also is the reality that if I want to go, there's the assurance that he's going to get me there. He is responsible, which I think takes an awful lot of stress off my shoulders, you know? I kind of love, I'm a very task-oriented person, and I love when I can delegate something to somebody. Like, I got 3 things on my list. Oh, great. You'll take those, you know? I get to delegate salvation to God.
Ooh.
He's going to take care of it. It's wonderful.
Can I tag on just with a question?
Please.
Because you used some words this morning, you know, the justification, sanctification, glorification. And a minute ago, we were talking about righteousness by faith. I mean, those words are a mouthful, especially for people who aren't really familiar with Christianese. Can you talk to us a little bit about your study of righteousness by faith? What does that actually mean?
Yeah. So righteousness we probably could understand it. People probably think more of right doing, you know, righteousness. But it also is the same word in the Bible for justice, you know? And it's really talking about how God's character, he is just, he is right. Honestly, he is love, you know? And righteousness by faith is us having the faith that God has not only declared us righteous, but will make us righteous simply by trusting him to do that. It first comes from Genesis chapter 15, where Abraham faiths God, he trusts God, and God ledgers it. God counts it for righteousness. He says, you know what, Abraham, you trusted me, we're going to declare you righteous.
So, devil's advocate.
Oh, thank you.
Which he doesn't need, but go ahead.
Yeah. Abraham did something, and God then declared him righteous.
And what did he do? He trusted God?
Didn't he go on a journey? Didn't God say, "I'll make you a father of nations," and then he go over here, and so Abraham goes and does that.
And if are you getting at the fact that Abraham earned it, Abraham achieved it,
Yeah, that's
Abraham.
what I'm saying. I mean, didn't Abraham kind of go on a kind of a life journey after
Sure.
God told him to, and so God was like, "Oh, okay, you know."
Yeah.
So
He earned every mile of that.
So I guess my question is, for a lot of people, the huge question mark is, where does what I do play into things? Because it's got to play in there somewhere. I mean, Abraham did something, right?
And Abraham did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's keep thinking of. I mean, man, Abraham's crazy. Abraham lies about his wife, their relationship, and God comes back and says, "Yeah, Abraham's my prophet." I mean, it's just crazy stuff, you know. Abraham is the one who decides, I am going to figure this promise thing out myself, you know. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Sarah's plan, you know. So Abraham is doing a lot of the wrong thing, but then there's some Abraham doing the right thing, and the right thing that he's doing is trusting God to do, you know. God says, "Go to a place I'll show you." Okay, which direction? Just go. I'll show you. So he trusts God. The work that Abraham does is trust God. Jesus even comes around and says to, I think is it John chapter 5, where they say, tell us what works to do and we'll do the works of God, or it might be John 6. And he says, the work of God is to believe on the one who sent me, to trust me to work, you know? So I think Abraham is a great example. Abraham trusted God. He faithed God, and God said, that's enough that I can work with. And he counted that for righteousness. Because if God has somebody who will trust him, then God will be able to form, mold, direct, guide, disciple, develop. He will make us righteous, you know?
Yeah.
I think Abraham trusted him.
So you're saying that essentially that Abraham, for the good and the bad, the things that he did, like lying about Sarah and taking the journey, where do I go? Just go. And we can all resonate with bad decisions. We can all resonate with not knowing what to do and trying to trust. So you're just saying, like, Abraham was just a normal dude doing life, and God said, that's enough. That's enough. You trust me to do what I'm asking. So we're just to trust, and he takes care of the rest. Is that a good?
Well, I mean,
So it should give us hope, right?
I mean, really, I think there are some simple verses that I'm not sure we milk them for all their worth. God so loved, he already loved the world. I don't have to make him love me. That he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever, the word believe is trust. It's the same word. Okay, so I'm going to trust that you really love me. I'm going to trust. And, if I need to feel like I'm doing more, okay, I'm going to trust you when it's hard to trust you. Trust is not easy,
Yeah.
But he didn't give us a greater task than trusting him, did he?
I like what you just said, though, because usually we equate with, if I need to do something, that means I got to pull up the bootstraps a little bit tighter. I got to straighten up and fly right, and I've got to conquer a sin. I've got to be more involved. I have to do something. And not that there's anything wrong with, trying to be more Christ-like in our lives. I'm not saying that, but really what you're saying is, you said it. What did you say? I'm going to do.
Trust more when it's hard.
Yeah, to trust. Right, to trust more when it's hard. That's beautiful, because that's probably as hard as anything else we could think of to do. But in actuality, it requires less of us. Mm-hmm. In my estimation, it requires less, but would normally be seen as, well, that's kind of watered down grace. You're going to do less, and you're just going to count on God to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't make sense to some people.
We're teaching.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me sometimes.
Sure, we're teaching from this story of from Egypt to Canaan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what did the children of Israel do to free themselves from Egypt? I mean, let's really answer that. Egypt is the most powerful nation on the planet, and God literally decimates Egypt. I mean, you got the blood in the Nile, you got the frogs, you got stuff where it's just happening in Egypt, but not in Goshen.
Yeah.
You got boils on folk. God is predicting when it's going to happen. He decides when it will stop. You got hail falling. Then eventually you have all of the firstborn children dying. Now it's about time for the children of Israel to do something. It's the first time they're told to do something. What are they told to do? Take a lamb, slay it, put the blood on the doorpost, and get inside. Did they deliver themselves by following those directions? No, God delivered them. You know what I mean? But what they did was give evidence that they're trusting him. Okay, I'm trusting that God is going to spare the life of my firstborn son. And I'm trusting that if I do what he tells me to do, he's going to handle it. I think somehow we have translated, when I do my part, it accomplishes something. No, they did not save themselves. Sure, they obeyed God. I'm not discounting obedience.
Sure, yeah.
But obedience didn't earn anything. It didn't. The people that slayed the lamb didn't make themselves free. But it's trusting God. That's what he works with, Why am I getting so excited? I have no idea.
No, you should be. And that was
good stuff. That's why.
That's how I felt this morning, when it was just the overall theme of this is that you're looking at things the wrong way. Trust is really, while not easy, obviously, man, what a better, or what a more attractive offer to me than work.
Yeah.
The other, thinking that there's somehow what I do is going to free me somehow, but rather trusting and just going, I have no idea, and admitting I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm doing the best from what we're communicating, and when I'm speaking with God, I'm praying, and you do your personal time. All those things that you think you might have an idea, you like to plan. I like to plan. I like to know. I like to think I'm going to go do this in 6 months, or I'm going to do this. And I've got some plans, whether those come true or not. But to put it in God's hands is so much easier than to just stress about, did I do enough? When it's really just, can you obey the best, the best that you know how, the best you can listen, the best. Is there a competition for obedience? like there is for work when you trust? Because I think that might be the last trust, but like, how much do I have to trust?
The last vestige of legalism.
I know. It might be the last one that needs to get trampled to believe that really this is something I can really hold in my hand and take.
Yeah,
and take.
but isn't it interesting? Almost like love, how much do I love? I mean, you either love or you don't love, How much do I trust? You either trust or you don't trust, And Randy, I think it includes things like trusting that Canaan is better, trusting that the manna is better than the flesh pots in Egypt. I mean, let's bring it to practical everyday decisions if people are concerned about lifestyle kinds of things. So, God wants me to be healthy, and there are some health choices that my tongue may not desire right now.
Kale.
Okay. Well,
oh, come on.
I had kale at lunch. I ate some because it was good for you.
I saw you watch. I saw you eating it.
It's fine. It's whatever.
But actually trusting that whatever God has really is better. I mean, do you know there are people who really think sleeping with a bunch of women is better? And I'm here to tell you, being with my one wife is amazing. I don't think people realize that what God has, those 10 commandments, instead of, man, I got to do so-and-so, I got to do so-and-so. No, I'm really trusting that God's vision for life is so much better, Canaan is much better than Egypt.
And
I think the question, I think probably most people will agree that Canaan's better than Egypt, but I think the wilderness is the part where a lot of us struggle through. It's like, I'm not sure that the wilderness in between the two is better than being in Egypt. But in fairness, the children of Israel show up at Canaan and they look in, they're like, no, you're right. And I think maybe sometimes some of us do show up at the promised land, not realize we've arrived. It looks like it's a dangerous place. So, but yeah, I think for me, like the struggle is that wilderness area. It's that in between. It's that journey that you're on and you're like, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, but is Canaan plus wilderness that much better? Because it's not just, to me, it's not just, is Canaan better than Egypt? Yeah. But if I have to add whatever, and I'm no good at the desert, and I go from 11 days and I immediately do the stupid thing, and now I'm at 40 years, that's not the same, that's not the same journey, right? Is the 40 years still, Canaan still better than Egypt?
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So, I mean, I think that is the question, though. And I think, though, that I think it's all on how you look at it. Is slavery better than? And that's, I mean, if we put it in those terms, most of us are going to realize that, we may, it may be tough making a living. It may be tough, making the payments on your house. But none of us, I suspect very few of us would want to be a slave and have to live in the slave master's housing. We like the freedom of being able to make our own way and make our own choices and that sort of thing. And I think that the kind of where Puck was going today, and it was just such a good sermon,
Yep.
was that we sometimes just forget how hard slavery was to sin, just how terrible it really was. And we get into those wilderness areas and we're like, you know what? This is rough. And I don't know if I'm going to make it to Canaan. I'm not really sure if this is all it's cracked up to be. And I just want to go back to the leeks and garlics and whatever else back in Egypt.
Garlic.
So, so I think the tough part is like, and it's just what really spoke to me today was just that pushing through. Just when you're feeling the pangs, when you're feeling that, it's telling you what's needing to be done. And that was, to me, I think one of my favorite lines. You had some really good ones, but one of my favorite lines is not just getting us out of Egypt, but getting Egypt
out of
us. No, God's not just getting us out of Egypt, but He's getting Egypt out of us. And I love that line because that is such, I'm very thrilled for God to take me out of Egypt, but I don't really like him taking the Egypt out of me. And I love that line.
And going along with what you're saying, Ken, I mean, and most definitely, the question is not, is Canaan better than Egypt? It's, is Canaan and the wilderness better than Egypt? You know? And I'm going to sound like a broken record. It really goes back to trusting. I might not feel like it is. Yeah. In the middle of it, I probably wouldn't consider it to be that. So, but I'm trusting that his thing is better. No, okay, you think about Jesus after his baptism. His father says, "This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased," and then sends him into the wilderness. Jesus could be like, what's going on? Why am I going into the wilderness? You know, did I misbehave or something? But he's trusting, no, you're in charge of my life, and I'm trusting that whatever path you have is going to work out for my good, you know? I don't want to imply that it feels better.
Yeah.
That's not what we're trying to say.
Well, we're emotional people.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that I think can be helpful to think about is when people traveled and something important happened between them and God, they built a monument. And I think we can still build monuments in the wilderness, in the desert, to create sort of benchmarks where we can see where we've been. And then the path back toward Egypt is sort of littered with these benchmarks of, oh, I remember when God was with me here. I remember when God was with me here. I remember. And I think those monuments sometimes can put that distance that we need between us and Egypt and make Canaan seem just that much closer.
I think that's a good point. Good point. Good visual.
That was a good visual. I like that. Well, we did have a couple of questions this week, even though we didn't have time, because we were like, look, Buck needs as much time as you can from the front. We can't.
You have a guest, you want them to.
Right. You can't be wasting time with questions, but we did have a few. We'll start with the comment from Brian, who said, "Thank you, Pastor Furman. I'm currently walking in the wilderness after Egypt. I pray to God that I will soon be brought into the promised land and not want to look back. I ask for your prayers as well as from my church family." So, Brian, definitely we'll be praying for you this week. Ronnie Rue asked, will God bring those non-believers we pray for into the promised land through our prayers?
It's a good question. I definitely resonate with the burden and the desire. You know, it's Abraham interceding for saving Sodom and Gomorrah, you know? But I think the answer to that question is way above my pay grade. You know, God is desirous of bringing them in. He's not willing that any should perish, you know.
Yeah.
But God is so loving that he is not going to save against people's will, you know. So the answer is, I don't know. You know, will he try? Most definitely. But will he bring into Canaan a person we're praying for who absolutely decides they want to stay in Egypt? I don't think we serve a God who forces people to live with him forever in Canaan.
Yeah. I think that's about as close as you can get.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No?
Thought that was pretty complete.
I was going to say that's pretty complete. I don't think there's one more. And then we have a question from Jahimi, who asked, how are the bloody deliverances of God's people in the Old Testament square off with the ultimate deliverance that Jesus did in the New Covenant? Why is it important to my ultimate deliverance?
I'm not sure if I'm catching the bloody deliverance. Do you know what they're referring to? Sacrifices? Is that what they're talking about, maybe?
Bloody deliverances of God's people in the Old Testament. How does that square off with the ultimate deliverance that Jesus did in the New Covenant? Well, Jesus was kind of bloody too. I mean, he died on a cross to deliver, no?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I wonder if they're referring to the plagues that fell on Egypt. I wonder if Jimmy's kind of referring to, you know, God kind of being, what my kids would call aggressive with
aggressive. The judgment side, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, killing the firstborn of Egypt was, you know, pretty intense. And so I think maybe what they're trying to get at is, you know, how does that correspond to what God's doing today? As he's trying to, is God employ that kind of violent tactic still? Is that that something? I think it's one of those questions that we often wrestle through with when we read the Old Testament. We feel really happy just to leave it there in the Old Testament and not deal with it too much.
Yeah. Let's assume that we're grasping and understanding the question. I wish we could ask the person and kind of clarify, But, one thing that I think is interesting that might go in this direction a little bit, there was a whole mass, they call them the mixed multitude, that actually came along with the children of Israel. And these are people who observed the judgments. They observed God's judgment against sin and how he pretty much made an open mockery of all of their deities, And they came to the conclusion, your God is God. We want to go with you.
I got to be with this, yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that one of God's objectives with judgment, even though it's difficult and painful, is some people actually will be awakened and won when they see judgment. It kind of can be that last evangelistic attempt, I don't know.
Well, and I think when it comes to Egypt, I mean, I these questions typically come out a lot when you start to talk about the plagues and, were they fair? Were they just, God's wrath? And we know that Old Testament kind of feeling we get about God sometimes. But what else, what was going to change Pharaoh's mind? It was like the greatest escalation in history of what, we started with something pretty benign, and then we moved all the way to, firstborn children, being killed. So you wonder what else would have worked if this wasn't it? And, again, trusting that God knew exactly what had to be done to make it for his plan, I guess. It doesn't answer the question, but it always makes me wonder, what would it have taken if it wasn't this to make it the final, I'm going to let them go. I'm going to do what God told, what God's making me do, essentially, I guess. So maybe not the question. Jahimi, if that didn't answer your question, text us 407-965-1607 or podcast at WholeLife Church, whichever is easier. And we can also re-tackle that next week if there's something specific that we didn't answer that you would like to know. And that was it. So if, anyone, if something comes up, always use those same numbers, email, and let us know if you have questions.
I think this is a good week for a bonus episode.
Is this a good week for a bonus episode?
I feel like it is.
Okay, well, hold on tight, and we'll jump into the bonus. Let's wrap this one, and then I can just grab the other.
Yeah, I'm just going to let people know there might be a bonus episode.
There might be a bonus. So stay tuned. That's usually our bonuses are a Friday evening.
Yeah.
So we'll tell them in just a second.
I was just going to think maybe, we'll cut this out if you say no.
Okay.
But I wonder if would you be comfortable having a little discussion about race in America?
Oh man, I'm happy to talk, my brother.
Maybe as we're talking about Black History Month, maybe just have a little conversation about race in America and what you're seeing, and what maybe we can try to recreate one of our frank conversations from Nashville.
Not a problem.
Okay. Stay tuned. Friday night, you'll hear this in the bonus pretty much, unless for some reason we scrap it, but I'll let you know if that happens. But the one thing I wanted to leave with this message was it really and please, if you didn't see the message, please go back and get it, or you can swipe up in today's show notes and that will take you directly to Speaking of Grace, which has that message there so that you can hear it, because it really was an impactful message with all that we've talked about. And at the end, he finished by saying, the same God who has delivered us out of and is bringing us into has faithfully promised to take us through. And you said that very emphatically, and it was very emotional, and it really hit home to make us remember that that's something every day we can count on.
Amen.
That God is going to be faithful to take us through. And then before we finish, I also wanted to let you know that this isn't going to do you any good tonight, but we will be having a Black History Month worship concert tonight, and I didn't know until today that it will actually be streamed. Therefore, it will also be archived, and if you I can't tell you to come to the concert because you're not going to hear this until Wednesday.
But you can't tell them that they can come if they didn't get a chance. They can
watch
still
it.
attend.
Yeah,
by watching it.
You can still attend by watching it. So there's been a ton of planning by our youth and teens that have made this program a priority. They've made this program, from what I've seen, it's going to be pretty awesome.
They've done a great job. I'm so
Yeah,
happy.
Melanie's been working with them.
Yeah, we can just stop now and turn everything over to them. They've got this under
They've
control.
got it under control.
Yep.
Awesome. This is good. So definitely don't miss it. And what we'll do to make sure that you have that link, I will put the direct link in the Friday bonus episode. So if you're not sure where to find it, I will direct you to the platform that you can view it. It will be in the bonus episode show notes, which will come out on Friday evening. So I'm going to say thank you to Puck for being here today and for the message and for the conversation, both over lunch and here on the podcast. It was amazing, and I've been blessed for it. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So don't forget, this Friday evening, there'll be a bonus episode in your feed. So don't forget to click on that. So thanks for listening and have a great week.